Some hockey now. Ron MacLean joins us from Hockey Night in Canada. Everybody's excited to chat with Ron. And hey, we got a comment here from Ted in Red Deer. Ron, he says, you've got 2 Red Deer guys now in 2 weeks. It was Randy Moller last week, joined us live from Florida. Can I ask you your thoughts on Randy Moller as a Red Deer guy like yourself? What a character that guy is.
You know, Rod, I had Ed Whalen as a hero, right? Stampede Wrestling, and he was such a great character, such a humble pie guy in real life, but he could really crank it up in the ring. And I remember I loved the Stomper, and to see Ed Whalen and the Stomper go mano a mano, and I don't know what happened, but I didn't learn a lot from Ed, even when I worked with him. Randy Moller, on the other hand, somehow mastered some of that great performance, that great theater. He's incredible as a broadcaster. I saw them all. Mike was and Jamie were also a great player for the Lethbridge Pronghorns when they won for Mike Babcock the University Cup. But Randy was he was probably Mike had a fabulous career and was with Edmonton Oilers. Great family. John, their dad, I used to go do on locations at the car dealership where John sold, I believe it was Mercury's and Fords. Just a great hockey family, and what a job Randy's done in Florida. When there didn't seem to be a whole lot of hope, he was kind of the rock for them, wasn't he?
Yes, and what a start for them. I was watching their game from the Islanders, from Long Island last week, and I'm like, God, Randy's so good. For a hockey player, you're not supposed to be this good on the air. He's a great broadcaster, too. People would forget that he was ever a player. He's so good on TV, right?
Yeah, just so full of color. That's the part that blows my mind. And, we were all supposed to be, don't dress to impress. And, you didn't move too much out of your comfort zone when you grew up in central Alberta because someone would hang you out to dry. But Randy's got it. He's always had that fun in him. And when I go back to town and I see Mike and go swimming and have a beer, and as I say, I've kind of lost track a little bit of Jamie, but he had a fine hockey career too. So they're, as I say, great family and good for Randy. When he won the World Juniors, that was kind of the beginning of it for us. It was back in 1982 when the 2 Moller boys were part of the team that won in Rochester, Minnesota. And to see him as a Red Deer wrestler, they had a fantastic squad with a lot of great players, including the Sutters. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, Randy told me the story again last week about the World Juniors in 82. I think he likes that story, Ron. But I love how proud they are of you guys, and I love this Battle of Alberta, man. Like, summer was just not even a pause on it. Like, we're back into it. Man, it's great having these teams good at the same time, isn't it?
Well, I used to live in Woodbine, which is right next to Tsutsina First Nation there, where you've got the beautiful golf setup and casino. And we were, at that time, Canyon Meadows was the host headquarters for the Calgary Flames annual golf tournament. And I just remember that was also a heyday in the battle between the two teams. The Cup ran, as you know, from 83 through 91 through either city. And I used to have all my friends from Red Deer come to either Calgary or Edmonton, wherever we were, and they would flop in my hotel room and clean out my mini bar. It was a very expensive decade, but I'm glad we're in for it again.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'm glad those days are behind me too. Wayne is watching in BC. Victoria, as a matter of fact, he says, "Hi, Ron. Who are your picks for the Stanley Cup final?"
Well, you're going to see Vegas, Rod, in Calgary here. I got a feeling about Vegas suddenly. And it's an amazing story if Logan Thompson, the netminder's Calgary roots, if he can play well in net, then they're a team. They're well coached, well managed. Kelly McCrimmon, of course, is a dear friend. And I just think I saw Eichel in the first couple of games, and I thought, oh boy, he's on a mission. And to have Pietrangelo as your leader and Mark Stone to do what he did with that late goal, and they've got 17 Canadians on that Vegas Knights team. So I think they're just well positioned for the kind of hockey you need to play in the postseason, and they would be a real threat to the incumbent. Colorado is very hard to bet against. I think they're fantastic. And over on the other side, I'd have to go with Carolina. Is a little bit of a dark horse, but not much of a dark horse. I think they might supplant Tampa and Florida as the power in the East.
Well, the Golden Knights are my team, and I'm wondering if I can get away with wearing Golden Knights gear to the game Tuesday night.
No, you can't.
Would you suggest?
No.
You didn't even have to wait.
That would be like talking about Friday on a Monday.
Yeah, thank you for saving my life on that one. But the Flames have beaten Colorado. The Flames have beaten Edmonton. And I wonder where you think the Flames line up in this pantheon of top teams in the NHL right now.
Yeah, good point. Actually, Calgary, I should consider, and Edmonton, of course, are right there as well. But the Flames, to see, the goaltending depth. Dan Vladar was sensational when they needed him against Edmonton Saturday night. They're fast. There was kind of a perception that Calgary's not that fast, but either the way they move the puck or the Mangiapane line is brilliantly quick, and that Huberdeau passing is exceptional. And Kadri, what a performance the other night. I was saying to our panel that he didn't have a hit in the game, and I think that was a kind of a concerted effort by Nazem not to take a penalty. If he got too keyed up and started running around to match Evander Kane, they might end up in the box, and you can't do that against the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah, there's every reason to think that the cup could go to either Alberta team too. But I just got kind of a feeling about Vegas and their experience and what I saw that first couple of games. Way too early to judge, I realize, but they look good.
Yeah, but the fans don't care that it's early. Like, for instance, I had the great pleasure of broadcasting the first ever junior hockey game in a brand new facility in Assiniboia, Saskatchewan Saturday. A gleaming new facility they built on a new radio station. I came back to my hotel in Assiniboia. I turned on Hockey Night in Canada, and there were you saying, he doesn't have a hit tonight, not on the stat sheet anyways. I knew clearly you want to be clear that maybe he did have a hit that they didn't track. That was
I don't trust
the way you threw that in there.
I don't trust that stat, and I'm sure you don't either. But I was kind of leading to that idea that he was going to play controlled against a team that has a lethal power play, which was just the growth of Nazem as a leader. He really played that role well last year for the Colorado team, because he had that knack of going out for sure in Toronto and taking the big hit and having himself suspended or taking a major, and just at key moments just a little too high, and that's just a growth lesson. And that's again a little bit why I fear Vegas if I'm Calgary and Edmonton, is they've had that same kind of a humiliation or comeuppance over the last couple of years when expectations were sky high and they didn't meet them. And obviously the Eichel trade kind of set them back because they had injuries to Pacioretty and him. But I feel like they've lost enough that they will be just blood in their mouth when they bite their tongue. So look out for that wounded animal.
Well, you mentioned growth, and that's it's fun to watch somebody grow in life. And if it's a hockey player, so be it. Nazem would be that. Where you are sitting there in the Mecca, are Leafs fans, could they be told to let Mitch Marner grow, to let Austin Matthews grow, or is that just lost on them?
Well, I think Austin from the get-go, it's funny. I remember when he came in, they always brought the top prospects in, and they would come on Coach's Corner with Don. And he was just one of those guys who looked around the situation, and he was, if I could put a word to it, it would be bemused. He was not impressed or scared or anything. He wasn't cocky. He wasn't arrogant. But he just, as an 18-year-old, had a way of carrying himself, Austin, that nothing was going to faze him. I feel like, I don't know why, Rod, when I watched him in the dressing room prior to the opener in Montreal, they had a shot of Slavkovsky who looked as loose as a goose, and Austin looked kind of... he looked tense. For the first time, I've seen him once at New York in a game at Madison Square Garden look a little tight before the game, and reading into body language is a fool's game or mug's game. But I think he does realize that this is a huge, huge year for him and the team, and he's carrying a little bit of that right now, and maybe grinding a little bit right now. Marner is, just magic. He is such a talent, and Nylander's off to a good start, and so is Tavares. So their core four is playing really well right now, which gives Toronto a shot. But they have some real question marks on the blue line, and that's going to have to be, I think, sorted out at some point if they go deep.
It's all the fun part of watching it. Some fun questions, if you don't mind, from the viewers. Colin in Ottawa, watching on Game Plus, says, how does Ron remember all the hockey stories he recounts on air? I'm always amazed at his vast knowledge of hockey. I think that's what makes Ron, but how would you answer that question?
Well, you study, Rod, we kind of rehearse our ad libs, and that's the truth of the matter is you study and study, blessedly this year, and I think our producers are probably going to drive them crazy because you've got a week to prepare for Saturday night. In the past, I'd have been on a plane and into a smaller community to do hometown hockey and kind of lost to the Hockey Night in Canada gang for 3 days. But we just love our craft and have to practice intensely our craft. Wayne Barry, who taught me at Red Deer at CKRD, the business, he had a rule: 10 hours of prep for every 1 hour on the air. And that sounds outrageous, but it's kind of the truth. You really have to spend the time. You know, as an example, on Saturday night, there was 560 names, and that was just 28 teams in action. We didn't have all 32. If you have all 32 teams playing, you've got 640 names playing, and that's a lot of stories and a lot of names. And like all of us, I have this habit of using the parents' names. You know, if I have William Nylander, I'm apt to call him Michael Nylander in a fatigue moment, because there's a lot of, you know, Jake DeBrusk could be Louis DeBrusk and so forth. That's when you get to be our age, or my age at least. That's the one thing I have to battle.
I fall prey to the exact same thing. But I'll tell you something. Gene Principe is a good friend of mine, and you know, he likes the puns. And somebody made a comment about him being the king of puns, and Gene was like, "No, there is one, Ron MacLean."
Yeah,
and the respect shown by Gene to you, that is the kind of stuff that I just love, man. I mean, but do you feel the pressure having to come up with a pun before the commercial?
No, it's sure Gene would say the same, Rod. And there's, you know, obviously times I wish I could rein it in, and I didn't bite at the temptation to come up with a pun. I always attribute it to growing up in Red Deer, and we all had half tons, and we all had bumper stickers on the rear of our half ton trucks, and those were always turns of phrase. They were puns. So I was kind of exposed to it. Plus, I had a dear friend, Ray Blair, who I played all sports with, and we called him the Prince of Puns. So there's a guy who's far superior to Gene and me in that regard. His name is Ray Blair, and he punned everything, and I just liked that. You know, wordplay was, to me, it was a way to fight pretense. And as I said, I wish I could sort of discipline myself not to do maybe more than one or two a night. John Shannon, you know, he aged trying to get me to stop doing it, but it's right there in front of you if you enjoy language. And now everybody's playing Wordle. You know what that is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I haven't played it, but I know what it is. I'm not smart enough.
Me either. But me either. But I see people doing Wordle, and I think, oh, good. The world's going to all be doing puns, because it's kind of in that vein. Just playing with words is the battle.
I love that everybody loves what you do with it. Two quick ones from Todd in Regina. He says, Mr. MacLean, what are your thoughts on Torts coaching such a young squad in Philly, and how do you see it working out? You see they're 2-0.
Well, and you were going back to that earlier conversation about coaching changes in the CFL. 13 new coaches, or at least in different positions this year. 40% of the league had a turnover at the helm, and that's because, as was discussed with you and Mark, that, you know, that fresh take. There's an expiry date for all coaches, etc. But I think John Tortorella, you know, I'll just tell you, Todd, a lesson or a story. When he had Vinny Lecavalier in Tampa, he used to, because you saw him really going at Dubois in Columbus. When Dubois was playing there, PL, he did it on the bench. He ripped him, and they all said, why would you do that in public in front of everybody? Well, when he had Lecavalier, he used to bring him into the office and tear a strip off him. And Lecavalier felt vulnerable. He had no support around him. He had nobody. If he wanted to tell Jay Feaster, the manager, that Torts is saying this or doing this, he had no witnesses. So Jay Feaster went to Tortorella and said, John, you're a bit of a live wire, and you do have a temper. If you're going to rip a player, please do it in the dressing room in front of everybody, or do it on the bench where there are witnesses for the victim of your rant. Isn't that interesting? And from that day forward, going into about 2003, Tortorella started to do all of his rants in front of other players. So when you see John do that, it seems like he's pandering to the cameras, but it's not. That's the reason. He'll be good.
And they learn. Yeah, they learn as the coaches grow too. You would hope, just like the players. Yeah. Devin in Burns Lake, BC says, Ron is the game's encyclopedia. There's no doubt about that. And T. Will in Winnipeg says, hey, Ron, as a person living in Toronto, are you aware Winnipeg exists? I say that with a smile. You must get that all the time. The Western...
Well, right after this interview, Rod, of course, they called Dick Irvin was a homer for the Montreal Canadiens, and Brian McFarland was Brian McMapleleaf. You can't be situated in these cities and not be tainted. But right after this call, I'm going on with Mark Chipman, a phone call, and we're going to talk about February 11th and all that they're doing for Dale Hawerchuk and the Winnipeg Jets. And I was in communication with Rick Bowness all through the last couple of days because, of course, he was going through his COVID, but I'm building a story for Saturday night when we have Toronto at Winnipeg. Sorry to bring up the Leafs. And I tell you this, my breakout moment in broadcasting was in Winnipeg doing the Wednesday Lottery with Don Whitman. And my favorite author, you can see there's a lot of books in behind me here, My favorite author is from Steinbach, Manitoba. Her name is Miriam Taves, and she moved up. Great story about Miriam. Her father, Mel, ran a school in Steinbach, but on weekends for pin money, he would sell his eggs up in Winnipeg. He would drop off containers of eggs. So at one point, he was getting ready to marry a woman named Elvira, who would be Miriam Taves, the author's mom. And he wanted to build a house just like one he'd seen in Winnipeg dropping off eggs. So Elvira says, well, what's it like inside? He says, oh, I have no idea. I just drop the eggs on the veranda and I move on. She said, well, you got to look inside to see if it's a house worth building. He says, I can't ask to go inside. I'm an egg deliverer. She said, leave it to me. So they go up to Winnipeg from Steinbach. She knocks on the door and says, do you mind if we have a look around? My husband here, Mel, wants to build a home just like this in Steinbach, and it will be our new wedding gift. And the guy says, come on in. It was Bill Mosienko. Bill Mosienko holds the record for the fastest hat trick in NHL history. He scored 3 goals in 21 seconds, and that just proves he's a good egg. Oh, sorry, there's a pun.
How about that?
I was just sitting enjoying the story. Yeah, for sure. It's the record that stands today. Ron, thanks. Don't want to let you go, but we have to. Always appreciate the time. Keep it up.
Same.
The games aren't the same without you. So thanks, Ron. Keep it up. I love it. And have a great week.
Yeah, Rod. Appreciate it. Keep up the great work yourself.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of The Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.